Hello my friends, welcome back to my channel. Another beautiful day in paradise after raining for several days. My friends, how does the World Bank and the IMF keep the Caribbean and Africa poor? Yes, I will answer that question for you today. How does the World Bank and the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, keep the Caribbean and Africa poor? My friends, it's a great strategy they use to keep the Caribbean and Africa poor, and I will explain to you right now. They keep the Caribbean and Africa poor by loans, by granting them exorbitant loans, big loans that they know that the Caribbean and Africa cannot pay back, and that is how they get control. But some of you may be asking, what is the World Bank and who is the World Bank and why the Caribbean governments and African governments always borrowing money from these organizations, my friend? I will explain to you what the World Bank is, but the World Bank and the IMF was created by the West for the West. It was created by the West for the West. What do I mean by the West? The West is Western Europe, America, North America, Australia, New Zealand, those countries. The IMF was created. The IMF was created way back in 1940 something. I'm just going to read for you now. The World Bank and the International Monetary Fund were created in the aftermath of World War II to promote global economic stability and development. Their creation was part of a broader effort to rebuild and restructure the international financial system. That is what they were created, the purpose of the World Bank and the IMF. The World Bank was established to provide financial assistance for the restructuring of war-torn Europe and the development of poorer countries. It aimed to reduce poverty, promote economic development, and improve infrastructure like roads, hospitals, schools, stuff like that. The goal of the IMF, its long-term mission, has been to reduce poverty and foster sustainable development by providing loans, grants, and development projects. Now, that is interesting because the World Bank and the IMF were created way back in World War II after Germany devastated Western Europe. They had to come up with a financial system in order to rebuild their war-torn economies, my friends. So they came up with the World Bank and the IMF, and they restructured the financial system in order to help them, to give them loans to rebuild and to make the economy stronger. Now, you may be asking, why is this such a bad thing? Well, in World War II, in the 1940s, around there, in the end of World War II, many of the countries did not exist. For example, almost the whole of the Caribbean, Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, Barbados, St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Lucia, Grenada, Dominica, all these islands were colonies of Great Britain, or the divided kingdom of Great Britain. That is what I normally call them. But those islands were colonies of Britain, whereas in Africa they were suffering from colonization still, where France was in charge of a big part of Africa. You had Britain and you had Spain and Portugal, and Germany. They had colonies in Africa, so the African countries were not free. So the European countries were free to plunder, go into Africa and take out what they want, because those were their country, their colonies. the same as the Caribbean. They could do whatever they want there. So the World Bank and the IMF was not created for us. But here's the thing now. After these countries in the Caribbean and Africa started getting their independence, and in like the 1960s, 70s, and 80s, then Europe can no longer take what they want from Africa and the Caribbean for free. So they had to come up with a financial system masquerading as help. But they then think back that they already have the World Bank and the IMF. So they thought to themselves, why not use these organizations to give loans to these Caribbean countries and African countries at exorbitant interest rate, and when we cannot pay back these loans, then they will come back in and say you need to restructure, you need we need this resource, we need that resource. So let me repeat this. You see how smart they are. The IMF and the World Bank, which are controlled by Western Europe and America and Canada, they could not go into the Caribbean and Africa after we got independence. So they now use the World Bank and the IMF in order to get control of us. And how do you control a people? You control the country by giving them exorbitant loans that you know they cannot pay back. And then what the IMF do, for example, in Africa, what they would have been doing, they give these loans so that they know that Caribbean and African countries cannot pay back, and then they would go into the African countries mostly, and they would say, oh, we know you cannot pay back these loans, so we're gonna bring in our companies to mine your gold, to mine your diamonds, to mine your silver, and we're gonna pay you 1 cent per kilo, or some crazy thing like that. And the African governments have to agree because they owe the same IMF and World Bank hundreds of millions of dollars. And then when they realize, the IMF and World Bank realize that you cannot pay back the loan that you got, they say, we will give you another loan, knowing that you will never be able to pay it back. But they don't care, because while you owe them, they have control of the government, they have control of the resources, they have control of the land. They can tell you you need to restructure, you need to cut back on spending on social care for your people, you need to cut back on roads, cut back on this. Things that normally help people, they would ask you to cut back on. Meanwhile, they know that this will make the people poorer. And then they will say, oh, we can help you. We can bring in a company that would hire a lot of people to mine the gold and mine the copper. And then they would bring in their companies, and then that is how they would excavate the raw materials like the gold and diamonds and copper, silver, dig them out the ground, and they will ship them back to Europe, ship them to America, and process them, make diamond watches, diamond rings, diamond gold chains, and then they will sell back the rest of the world for a large profit. And that is how the system works. That is how the IMF and the World Bank get control of the economies of countries, because they were never created for us, my friends. They were created for Western Europe and North America to rebuild the economies after the war. But they're going to use the same IMF and the World Bank to control us, giving us high interest loans. The loans that they give themselves there is low interest loan. And here's the other trick. Because we do not print money, America print money, Europe print their own money. So here's another trick. If, for example, Great Britain, the United Kingdom, borrows $1 billion from the IMF, guess what? That loan is useless, because all England, the UK will do is to print $1 billion and pay back the IMF. And that is where they get inflation, whereas the cost of the goods and food and material go up, and the same people will suffer because they have to pay more costs, but the government doesn't owe anything because they can simply print that money and pay their debt. America can do the same thing. For example, if America owes China $5 billion US dollars, all America has to do is to print $5 billion US dollars and pay China, and then take up the cost of the goods in America. Inflation, that is what they call inflation. And then the poor people will suffer, but they don't care because they control the debt. However, in Africa and the Caribbean, we do not print our own money. So let's say we have $10 million US dollars in debt in an African or Caribbean country. That is real debt that we have to pay back, because we cannot print anything, so we have to pay back that loan. Whereas in Europe and America, they print their own money, so they're debt free. Do you understand? It's fake. They do not have any debt. So they do not owe the IMF and World Bank anything, because it's their organization. All they have to do is to print the money and give them, and they will say, oh, inflation, cost of goods are going up, cost of services are going up. But the country will not suffer. So it's a financial system that we're in. We cannot win, my friends. That is why you have the BRICS coming up, and they're panicking, because the BRICS is developing their own financial system. They're going to print their own currency. They're going to trade in their own currency, my friends. For example, when we trade in the US dollar, here's another trick. You're going to trade in the US dollar, and then America is going to buy $5 billion worth of goods from China. All America has to do is to print $5 billion US dollars and buy the goods from China. So they're getting the money for free. They're getting the goods for free. We cannot do that because we do not print any money. We have to buy everything, my friends. I hope this conversation was helpful. Make sure to subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already. Like the video, share it with all your friends and family, and please subscribe to my channel, and make sure to comment as well. Let me know your thoughts on the channel, and let's have a interaction. So what I'm saying, the purpose of this video is to let us become aware of the IMF and the World Bank, that they are traps, my friends. Never borrow. That's the last thing you want to do, is to borrow from the IMF and World Bank if you're living in the Caribbean or you're in Africa, because the financial system was not created for us. Remember, it was created during the aftermath of World War I and II to help Europe and to help America, not us. But they would have used the system to control our governments and control our economies. But we say no more. It's time to bridge the gap. The purpose of this channel is to bridge the gap between Africa and the Caribbean islands, my friends. So let us work together, let us build together, and let us succeed together. My name is Bjorn, and I would like to thank you for watching this video, and of course I will see you again in the next video. Bye bye.